Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines, to provide some actual insight in what you can do with all this fucking information, and more importantly, how you can stay in business, because that's what it's all about here on our show. Is we want to help people and give people information they can apply and utilize and see a meaningful difference in their businesses and lives. And frankly, that is why I proudly fly the American flag behind me every single day, because I'm living my American dream, and I want each and every one of you guys to live out your American dream as well. Before we jump in, I do have a special guest for you guys today. You guys enjoy him more than you guys enjoy me, but that's why I keep bringing it back here. And but before we do that, I'm going to give a shout out to my friends over at VHub. You guys, vhubapp.com. You got to check it out. Whether you are a shipper, broker, or carrier alike, we all need access to trailers at some point in time. And the best part about what they have, especially for you small fleets and owner ops out there, you should never have to shut your business down when your trailer's in the shop. And the best part is you guys get paid to do this. So right now, with what they're working on, they have a reefer available out in Clearfield, Utah, needing to go over to Henderson, Colorado, $700 to do that. That's essentially going to cover your fuel. And that's on top of the revenue that you get for the freight that you put in that trailer. They also have San Diego, as Ron Burgundy calls it, going up to Spokane, Washington, $600 to do that for a heated van. And they also have them over in Paragould, Arkansas, and Glade Spring, Virginia, heading over to Orting, Washington. You get paid $1,550 to do that. And then also out there on the they're taking bids on this right now. It is Salaberry Day, Valleyfield, Quebec, going over to Calgary, Alberta. You got to go onto vhubapp.com and put in your offer. But again, hit them up. You guys, do me a favor. My man Xavier Campos and my friend Stacy Steen, she'll be in the audience. Just let them know that the Freight Coach sent you if you could. It always helps keep this neon light on out there as well. Bill McIntyre, good morning. Happy Monday. Let's go. Arun Deep, what's up, my man? Good to see you here. Sonny Sharma, good fucking Monday morning to you as well, sir. Drew Driscoll, good morning. Riley Dietrich, and you are watching from Knoxville. Let's get after it. Oh, from Rocky Top. Tennessee Vols are having a good start to the season. It's going to be a good game out there this week. Connor Foster, Monday. Let's go. Freight me up. Fucking love that line. Whitney Fowler, happy Monday. All right, I'm going to bring him on. He's a lot cooler than I am, at least to himself. His name is Matthew Leffler, the armchair attorney. Perfect mid-drink introduction. What's up, man?
Good to see you, Chris. It is so exciting to be back in the studio with you on this beautiful Monday morning.
I know. I was a minute late. I do apologize, but I do have a day job as well. I'm trying to juggle a lot of stuff here, but frankly, I won't stop and I'll continue to show up. So what's new in the armchair attorney world? What's going on? Let's the last time you were on, we were talking about those fucking non-competes.
Oh yeah. And apparently there's still a problem. Isn't that surprising? These things are not going away, man. They're not going away.
I know, but on that specific case that we were talking about, is there any update on how that's going to proceed or anything like that? Or are we still...
I mean, this is the claim against TQL for essentially tortious interference with a prospective business advantage. This is, he lost his job, or at least the opportunity to get a job with USI. As far as we know, that complaint has not been answered yet. Maybe it has recently, but no, it still goes on. And I feel for that family as they try to figure out, how do I get a job in the supply chain when everybody seems to be against me? It's tough, man. It's awful. It's a terrible situation.
I should just reach out to him and hire him.
This is the reality, is that this is how people are going to win the marketing war. If you want to get top talent, you cannot lock them into non-competition agreements. I mean, the data about non-competition agreements, I think it's 18% of all U.S. employees have signed a non-competition agreement. This is absurd. It's a complete disaster.
It's one of those things, like I understand the non-solicit aspect side of things. I get it. Because a lot of companies put a lot of money into their intellectual property and stuff like that. And I can understand that, but I also could never understand a non-compete at the same token, because unless you're an equity holder in the company and you are going to get fucking racks on racks if you leave, I don't understand the need of ever making anybody sign one. And frankly, I'll state it. Any company that I own will never have a non-compete for anybody. So
I mean, just to build off of that, I mean, 30 to 40% of people that have to sign non-competition agreements sign them after they've already accepted the job. So they're already working and they get presented with these documents. I mean, you have to understand, I'm a friendly lawyer. I try to be kind of helpful for people, but we are paid to trick you. We are paid to convince people who don't understand it to sign things. That is my entire, that's my profession in some cases is designed to do. So we need to educate people about how to understand these documents, how to negotiate. I mean, you guys know how to negotiate rates. Let's talk about negotiating for your own future.
Dude, I'm sorry.
I love them. I love it, man.
Paid to do, really?
That's what we're doing. This is an adversarial system. Like, I spend a lot of time thinking, how can I convince somebody to sign something that's not in their own best interest and make them think that it is? That's the whole goal of some of these, employment attorneys that are involved with these non-competition agreements.
No, absolutely, man. I get it. Drew Driscoll says, go Vols. Let's see. Happy Monday out there. Vitaly, he's got the Eagle. That's right. America. That's right. Yeah, man. Non-solicits make sense. Non-competes do not. And then, yeah. So, dude, this is 116th live show that we've done. And then
well done.
Matt and I are actually going to meet in person for the first time next week.
It's going to happen.
AOC Inland Conference. I'm looking forward to that one. Honestly, man, I'm going to be doing my live show from there. It's pretty cool, when people are like, hey, do you want to come to our event and do content there? And I'm like, wait, me? Fuck yeah.
You made it, brother. I mean, I used to live in River North in Chicago. I don't live there anymore. I live in St. Charles, but I'll drive up and I'll be there for the 3 days for that conference. I'm excited to talk with a bunch of people. And now that we've averted the big rail strike, I mean, that seems to be a pretty positive note. So there's a lot of great things to be celebrating.
Yeah, dude, I'm right there with you, man. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what diesel jumps up to this week. I'm because we're on the upward trend, and the current administration's eerily quiet on this now. They were celebrating that they brought fuel prices down, but they have nothing to do. Sorry, this isn't just a Democrat thing. This is an establishment thing, because the right would be doing the exact same fucking thing in this instance. But it's going to be interesting to see where this plays out. Obviously with the market operating the way that the freight market does, fuel is going to be it's going to be a big thing. It's always a big thing, but I think it's going to be, I hope it's just not a deterrent moving forward. I hope that there's some stuff out there and some reprieve in sight for the little guy,
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
So let's break down some articles. Are you okay with that? I mean,
I've read them. I've printed them. And when I read an article, I will almost always print them. I like to touch the paper. I'm very old school and inefficient in that way.
Because you're an attorney and you're used to fucking charging $1 to print that shit off. That's why.
And I get to redline it. That's the thing. That's how I take my notes. So you can't redline the computer screen. Well, you can, but it's not really good for the screen.
That's funny. And as Matt is my indirect legal counsel, none of this shall be used as legal advice under any circumstances at all, you guys. Let's break down the AB5 enforcement one here first, because it brought, this one was from ttnews.com, and it's fleets prepare for AB5 enforcement as the legal battle continues. So when they say the legal battle continues, because I saw that obviously the Supreme Court refused to hear it, and now they're going after the state of California. So I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a legal expert or anything like that. But generally, when you hear the Supreme Court shut it down, how is it now able to be appealed in the state? Just out of curiosity.
So, there is always avenues to try to change the law. And so what we see, and there's still challenges with Proposition 22, which is the thing that carved out the gig companies. That's still going through the courts as well. So the way this, just thinking about how law works generally, your federal court system is where questions of federal importance happen. And if there's a breakup between the states or the circuits, the Supreme Court may hear it unless the question itself is based on a federal law. So when we saw the FAAA preemption or other pieces that have been used to try to knock down AB5, this is about state laws, and state laws are the ones that really have the ability to say what is an employee and what is a contractor. The state appellate process for this, the AB5 specifically, there's not any real big challenges that are really meritorious at this point. What will likely continue to happen is people trying to lobby and find different ways to say, let's modify the law or get a different exemption for drayage carriers or other types of owner operators. But the process will not end. I mean, there's talk of using the Commerce Clause as a potential avenue in the federal system as one way to try to challenge this. But they're going to continue to try to bog it down. The goal for the defense here, or the CTA or anyone else who's lobbying for this, is to say, how can we stop enforcement? How can we freeze everything just for a moment and get some breather and see if we can find other ways to remove or repeal this law?
But is it enforceable while in the appellate process, or
absolutely? I mean, this is in that article. It's really, it makes me frustrated because they say, well, AB5 didn't go into effect until this appellate process was no, Dynamex happened in 2018. Like, this law is not new. Like, it's just this iteration of AB5 as a statutory thing. But these classification issues have been here since the 1980s. That there's still nothing ever stopped those things. Nothing ever stopped those things.
Because it goes, it goes on to say California has now escalated the battle with the enactment of AB5. Chris Shimoda, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the California Trucking Association, said the state treated August 29th date as the enforcement can begin. One hopes there's a de facto soft enforcement period of time, but it is coming. You don't want to find yourselves in the crosshairs when this happened.
If I can jump in, so what happens? Like, what happens when you get an enforcement action?
I would love to know.
This is the part that people should really focus on. When it comes to enforcement, this is when the state of California comes and says, aha, I believe you have misclassified your employees. Yeah. And you as the business say, but I didn't mean to, I didn't intend that. It's not the goal we had. And the state's going to say, I don't care what you wanted to do. We believe by de facto, like we presume that you have misclassified them. So what happens? Generally, there's a lawsuit in some form or fashion, and you are paying for this lawsuit out of your own revenue. You don't have insurance. Like, your insurance policy, your general liability policy does not cover this. You're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars per month defending these claims if they're coming after you. The penalties are substantial. You could be faced with back wages. You could be faced with including back overtime. And in the state of California, just so people know, overtime doesn't happen after 40 hours. It happens after 8 hours in a day. So you have to understand the liability you face. And here's I had over, let's say 70 employees in the state of California. I know this business. If you miss a meal period, so you have a guaranteed meal period. If you miss that meal period, like you're driving, you can't stop to take a break. That is a guaranteed hour in most cases of overtime given to you on that day. You cannot waive your meal period on I waive it for the next 2 weeks. I'm just going to drive during my break. No, you can't. It's a daily thing. These penalties, wage an hour, meal periods. Whoa, man, that liability is break your company liability. That is, we liquidate your things and make it so that you have to start over, because the liability is substantial. And then finally, not only these other things that can happen to you, but the attorney's fees paid by the state of California or private lawyers suing you. If they win, you're paying them. And what do you think lawyers charge per hour in the state of California?
How many pieces of paper did you print off? Okay, that's $100 out of my pocket right there. So that's why he's fucking gloating about it.
Well, this is the thing to keep people in mind. Like, there is this pathway and there's this media chatter that maybe AB5 isn't here to stay, or maybe things are going to get better or go back to how they used to be. I'm telling you, folks, it's not that way. It will not be that way. Yeah. If you wait for the government or lobbyists to protect you, you will be caught between a rock and a hard place. And that hard place is involuntary bankruptcy. When you can't pay your legal bills, you can't pay your vendors, you have to pay all of the back workers' compensation insurance, all of the back unemployment insurance, all of these things come out of your pocket, including the medical benefits that you were supposed to pay for. This is scary stuff. This is stuff that we all need to be aware of.
Yeah. And to your point, the government doesn't give a fuck about you. They're actually here to take your money because government can't operate without our taxes, and it's like, and again, I have been very vocal about my personal disdain for AB5. I think it's bigger than this. I think it's more about control and tax revenue than anything. Because even in the article they point out, they're like, I guarantee there's a list handed out through the Teamsters right now about all the people that are in violation of this and everything else. Because I guarantee the Teamsters are going to be the ones who are really fucking suing people big time for it, or they're gonna recruit members while simultaneously suing the business owner himself. And
what I would just, let me push back a little bit, because I'm not as cynical of AB5 as you are. I understand that, but keep in mind, folks, companies like FedEx Ground or Amazon, these are delivery companies that have used independent contractors. For Amazon, since ever. For FedEx Ground, decades and decades. And they get sued in every state every year, and they fight these classification issues of employee or a independent contractor. There are best practices you can use. If you are not sure what to do, contact your local trucking association. Even if it has a regional office, could be helpful. The Chamber of Commerce for your county are all places you can go. But this is not new. This has been happening for decades. And the sophisticated players know how to comply with the law and avoid these incredibly onerous liabilities that can happen if you're not paying attention.
For sure. And, just to make my statement clear, like, obviously I want the people who are exploiting others to be held accountable, but I also understand that what that does is that also opens up the fact that people can now overly exploit the situation. I mean, like, dude, like, there's an example in here of a guy who's just like, oh, hey, we just started a brokerage and funneled everything through that and did this. Like, there's ways you can circumvent the system and everything.
Absolutely.
But again, me personally, I just think it's a very bad precedent, because it's not just trucking that it affects. It's the everyday independent contractor that's out there. And that's what I don't like. That's my biggest thing is it's like, it's just another government overreach, in my opinion. That's literally all it boils down to. Because it's not like, because as a 1099 myself, I'm an LLC. I'm contracted to do work with people. Now, I don't know, like, does some of my clients have to put me on fucking payroll now? Do they have to pay my benefits now and everything else?
Remember, the way this happens is it's usually not the government coming and saying, we're going to challenge this thing that both of you two have agreed to.
Union, which donates to the, like, that's what it
Again,
is.
I wouldn't look at I like the union path. I wouldn't say that's the path. I would say what's happening here is it is someone who realizes, in almost every circumstance we have classification lawsuits, it is someone who realizes that they should have been classified differently. And it could happen any number of ways. You've been working for the same dispatching service, doing just their loads every single day for 5 years, and they call you and say, hey, we're done tomorrow. And you're like, what's happening? And you realize, well, maybe I should have gotten unemployment insurance or something like this. So it's almost always the weaker party, the person who's been hired as a contractor or an employee, sues and says, I was wrong. If you say I'm independent, they're going to believe you. They're going to believe you typically. It really goes back to what the facts are applied to the law. It doesn't really matter what you
I know it doesn't matter what my personal opinions are in this matter. I just personally think that I just see it larger what it actually is, because if it has been around for as long as you say, and I'm not here to question whether you're lying or not, because I know you're not lying. Like, I know you fucking overly research this shit, but I'm always of the mindset of, why now? Why at this time is this now going into effect? And that's my problem with it.
So I think that has to do with how the media portrays it. The idea that this was, again, an aberration is, again, it's not true. The ABC test is used in 20 different states, like to identify if someone's a contractor or an employee. What we have right now is California decided to make a statute, made an actual law about this outside of the common case law that was existing for decades. And codification is an intentional process to make something into a more understandable document, but it doesn't necessarily change the underlying stuff.
Yeah. Graham, Graham's question is, we all talk through the brokerage business funnel model to adjust classification. So essentially, Graham, if you are a third-party broker, say Chris Jolly Logistics right now, I'm only sourcing actual carriers. And that could be a one truck carrier that has their own authority, has their own operating, in like their W-9, their operating authority, and their insurance. They're their own entity. What this is talking about is owner operators. They just own their truck, and they're a 1099 independent contractor. They don't carry insurance or anything like that, because they are leased on to a trucking company, and that trucking company, it falls underneath their insurance policy and everything else. And what these companies are doing to circumvent this essentially is they're starting a brokerage. They're working with these leased owner operators to turn them into an actual carrier where they have their own insurance, their own operating authority, and they're not just like their business, like they're 1099 anymore. So they're their own entity and everything else. And then they're just brokering loads directly out to the carrier. That's my understanding. That's how I would view that they're doing this.
And also kind of just another way to look at this is if you're an entity that has a brokerage business and an asset-based trucking business, and you kind of conflate those two and you feed yourself, if you have that same business in California, it might not work. Again, not legal advice, but if you are doing the same thing that your contractors are doing, you're probably going to have those contractors be classified as employees. So many companies are splitting apart the brokerage and the asset-based business. Some companies are taking the owner operator, for example, and leasing the truck from them, and then also paying the driver as a W-2. So there's a lot of ways you can get around this. There's a ton of ways to do this effectively. I mean, what you can't do is have a sole proprietorship with no corporate structure, only working with one company. And that is essentially the dispatcher, and calling that an arm's length transaction might not work. So ultimately, I think the brokerage business is finding ways to be the intermediary from the load going to the driver.
And that's going to be it on that topic. It's just communism at its finest. PTnews.com, fleets prepare for AB5 enforcement as legal battle continues. Dude, so this is kind of off topic, but not off topic. I was watching, so I'm a big history buff, obviously. You know, for any of you out there, I love, like, world history is my absolute favorite. I do a ton of research on it. I'm one of those nerds who I could watch political or historical or war documentaries for fucking days straight and not get bored by it at all. And this weekend, I watched on the History Channel, it was the Men Who Made America Frontier division, rendition of it. And they talked about Daniel Boone back in the day, about creating Booneville and then the expansion westward and everything. And then Lewis and Clark, their expedition.
Manifest destiny, brother.
Dude, but it's just, it's so crazy. And why I brought that up is because of what they were fighting back then is essentially what we are fighting today. It's just, instead of the British telling us we got to operate in one way, now we're fighting our own government on how we have to operate. And there's just so many similarities that are out there, though. You know, there really is, because like people back then, I mean, they just want to fucking work. You know, like back then it was, I just want land, I want to produce, and I want to live off the land, and I want to be free of everything. And that's how I kind of look at a lot of these small businesses that are out there right now. It's like, it's not like anybody's willingly, I'm not saying everybody, because there are fucking shitty people in this world. Harsh reality. If you're one of those, you know, optimists on everything and thinking everybody's good, there are people out there who are like, I know why the law is there. Like, I'm not anti-government. I'm not anti any of that stuff. I believe in the structure and the confines of it. I'm just anti them taking away people's ability to work. You know what I mean? And I think that there's a lot of stuff that's out there that is in place to stop small business. And as a small business owner, like, I take that shit personally, because I'm just trying to live my American dream. I'm trying to, you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what I'm fucking doing. I paid taxes since I was 12 fucking years old. All right. That is when I had my first W-2 job. I've been paying taxes since I was 12 fucking years old. All right. I'm not anti-tax. I'm not anti that shit. I just want to be able to fucking operate in the confines and not have any additional restrictions on how I can make money to provide for my family. Because I'm not out here fucking looking to break the law and circumvent the system or anything like that. But I don't believe in additional layers that make it harder for people to just fucking make a buck.
Well, here's what I'll say to that, because I love that sentiment. I love that point. I think people kind of sometimes forget, and I think it's important because you, history aficionado, is the world existed in the United States without a lot of regulation. And when you have that, you have things like children working 12-hour days that are, you know, like not 12. You shouldn't be doing that at 12. You have to get a special permission from your parents typically.
Yeah, my dad fucking signed off on the shit.
Exactly. But
guess what? But Matt, we were raised in a time though, man, where like that was fucking a rite of passage, is working hard. Like, how many times did you work for, you know, you can maybe, if you don't have to answer this on camera, but dude, that was legal work that I used to, like, the shit that my old man had to do, but that shit fucking formed me into the man I am today. is through that hard. Like, I know there's a big difference between slave labor and what I'm describing right now, because I know what you're going to get at.
No, I'm not going to get to that one. I'll use the example of mandatory health insurance for companies. Like when that came about, the same argument came up and said, I don't want to do that. My employees don't need it. I have to be less competitive. I have to spend a bunch of money. And the reality is that we all consume these resources. We all consume health insurance and all of this. And, my father, when he had his company, he started with health insurance in the 1990s, and we didn't have to do it legally, but he did it because he wanted to make sure his employees had it.
Right.
But that made our labor rates higher than my competitors. I had to sell against my competitors that were charging less and doing the same amount of kind of work because I offered these. So the regulation is necessary. I am in favor of reasonable regulation, and AB5 is not unreasonable. I mean, the idea that you can still be an independent contractor exists, but if you're classifying somebody in a way that is only to your benefit, that takes away from them, that takes away the tax revenue from the state of California, for example, then you're going to be on the wrong side of history. And as time goes on, labor protections are very important. They're very, very important. And we don't have those. We have a much different society.
I will agree with that. And like I always say, I'll eat crow if I have to. All right. Like, I don't need to be right. Unlike a lot of people who create media and shit, I don't need to be right. I just need to bring a different angle to the table, because one way of thinking, an echo chamber is not always a good thing, as you
100%,
know.
100%.
And my whole thing is I get what you're saying there. Like, yes, those but like the thing is, Matt, and you know this just as well as I do, doesn't matter what fucking laws are in place, people are still going to break them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what the whole path of
this utopia doesn't exist. And that's like my big thing is they're like, oh, we're going to protect. Who are you really protecting? Like, honestly, who's really getting protected? The unions, who now are essentially going to go in and swallow up all of these people and be like, hey, we're going to pay, you're going to pay us dues. And then, yeah, that's kind of going to be it. Cause like, dude, I'll use the fucking labor negotiations that were going. Like, dude, I want the fucking union reps who convince the members to pay them dues. Like, because I was doing some back channel research on the shit with the trains, the railway, excuse me. And like a couple of the people out there are like, listen, we just want time off. Like, we're on call 24/7 and everything else. Like,
and that means you can't drink, you can't do anything. Like, there's a bunch of stuff you can't do if you're on call.
But
absolutely.
How the union, how the fuck has the union let this go on for this long? If they're for workers' rights and everything, the fuck they're about work. They're a profit center, man. Yeah. And that's the fucking problem is it's like, I want to hire those union reps who fucking convince their members to pay them dues while they didn't get any time off.
Like, we have to have a whole show about organized labor. Let me just say a couple of things in defense of some of the organized labor. And again, I'm only taking the controversial position against you.
I know you are. And that's why I'm having you on.
But like in 1980, 60% of truck drivers were unionized. 60%. That number will never happen again. If you don't want your company to unionize, pay them fairly. Look at Old Dominion. Look at what these organizations can do. There's ways you stop unions, and it's not by making people not employees. Now, the thing about the rail union, this is what's really important, is these organizing union things are because that work is so hard. Like, that's why the longshoremen are what they are. That's why the rail unions are what they are. That idea of being on call is not new to transportation, and it's not new to rails. But because that's the job expectation, then they have to negotiate for these things. So they're paid well, and I understand they want to have more time off, and everyone deserves more time off, but that is the nature of that profession, and it may change over time, but being on call is not atypical. What usually happens, those people rotate who's on call. You're not on call every single week.
I understand that there's always two sides of it. And again, I'm not sitting here shitting on organized labor as a whole, because I know that there are some phenomenal unions that are out there, but me, most importantly, I just want to make that decision. And to your point, though, like, hey, Old Dominion pays her, like, is Old Dominion non-union? I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, most for hire trucking companies are non-union. There's a handful that are, like UPS, obviously.
I didn't know
ABF. Yeah, total. Almost all of them are non.
But that's my thing, though, man. Is it's like, as long as there's no forced unionization that can fall about from this, then I'm cool with it as a whole.
The workers, they get to they'll do their thing. I mean, we see the Amazon votes. This is crazy stuff. This is very interesting.
Yeah. But for me, as everything, and this literally stands for every fucking issue out there, I'm freedom over everything. Your version of freedom might be different than my version of freedom. I don't want you to lose your right to your freedom because I might disagree with something. You know, like that's my stance on a lot of things. And I don't want to see people who just want to fucking make a living for their family be forced into a union situation. I almost conjoined words there, but I don't want them forced into doing something that they don't want to do. And they were completely content with how they were operating. You know what I mean? So I hope that the companies that they are leased onto, in the event that this isn't into effect, that the companies that they're leased onto at least provide them like the guidance. I don't want to say the resources and pay for it, but the guidance to classify as an actual carrier on their own so they can keep working in that regard. We didn't get to any of these other topics, and this is just what happens when it boils down to it. But frankly, you know, like, dude, this is why I have Matt come on, because although Matt and I see eye to eye on a lot of things, he can challenge the narrative. And I want other people to look at things from a different angle, because I'm not always right. I don't need to be right. I just want people to look at things through a different viewpoint and not get sucked into fucking clickbait and have it be there to drive emotions in one way or another. I want people to think critically about a lot of these things. But the most important part is, if you don't agree with a lot of these laws that are being, like, this is why you need to get involved in elections. This is why you need to get involved in primaries, not just the final, in primaries as well, and research your candidates that are supposed to be representing you and your the districts that you live in. Because if you don't fucking like the way that it's done, go fucking tell them you don't like the way that it's done. And, you know, at the end of the day, they fucking work for us, no matter what they want to fucking tell you. Those elected officials work for us. It's not the other way around. All right. And if you don't like the way that something's done, do something about it. Don't sit back and read a fucking article and be like, oh, that sucks, and then do nothing about it. Fucking stand up for what you believe in. I don't care if you disagree with me on fucking everything. Stand up for what you fucking believe in, and I'll still love you no matter what. So how does anybody know how to get a hold of the Armchair Attorney?
Well, you can find me on Twitter or even TikTok at Armchair Addy, ATTY. Why? Because ATTY is the abbreviation for the word attorney. I can find me on LinkedIn, and I'll say drivers hate driver-facing cameras. That what this article is about, is drivers hate driver-facing cameras. That's how you get unionized. And then, Chris, you and I will likely be talking, obviously at the Inland Conference, but when we decide to run for office, right? I think the people demand it. I think they require it.
I might have to one day. Because
I'm working on it, man. We're going to do it. We're going to do it someday.
We would be a good 1-2 punch, I think.
I agree. We're very reasonable.
Yeah, we're very reasonable, but fucking determined at the same way. But that's it for today, you guys. He'll be back. Don't worry. If you guys see value in it, share the show. That's all I can ask, because chances are, if you see value in it, your network's going to see value in it as well. I appreciate you guys all so much, and we'll be talking.